One glance, one laugh, one unseen betrayal, and a life you thought you knew unravels in an instant. This story explores the fragile line between trust and deception and the quiet moments that reveal everything you never wanted to see. Hey friend, please subscribe. 1 second for you. Big deal for me. She didn't see me standing in the hallway. Everyone else was laughing. Music was loud, lights were low, and the kitchen smelled like gin, smoke, and something burning in the oven. But I stood there, just outside the edge of the room, one shoulder behind a bookshelf, holding a paper plate I had no intention of eating from, and I watched her. She was laughing too hard. That was the first red flag. Not the kind of laugh you give when someone's funny, the kind you give when you want someone to think they are. Her hand was on his arm. Her body leaned in at a 45-degree angle. And that stupid nervous thing she does with her hair when she's flirting, she was doing that too, twisting it around her finger like she was 16. She thought I was in the other room talking to the host. She thought I was sipping cider and arguing about whether Die Hard is a Christmas movie. But I was standing still, watching her, watching them. And I swear to you, in that moment, something in my chest just clicked off. Not broke, not exploded, just stopped working, like a machine flipping into standby mode. Because it wasn't just the way she looked at him. It was the way she didn't even check the room. Like I wasn't even a possibility in her mind. Like I was already gone. I didn't say anything. I didn't interrupt. I didn't even flinch when she reached for his drink and took a sip. I just turned around, walked out the front door, and drove home without touching my phone once. It's been 8 hours since then. She still hasn't called. But that's not the part that's messing me up. What's messing me up is what happened when she finally came through the door this morning and collapsed like her whole world had just ended. She didn't say anything at first. The moment the door closed behind her, she just stood there, like she'd forgotten how to be a person. Her coat was still buttoned, her keys still in her hand, and her eyes, red, like she'd either cried for hours or hadn't slept at all. Probably both. She saw me sitting on the couch and didn't even flinch. No surprise, no fake smile, no attempt to soften the impact. Just this empty, blinking silence. I didn't speak either. I wanted to. I wanted to say something cold, something sharp. I had rehearsed at least 5 different lines in my head all night. But none of them came out. I just stared at her the same way I stared at that damn candle, waiting for something to burn. She walked into the living room, her steps unsure. She stood across from me like we were strangers. Then, I swear, her legs gave out. Just folded. She dropped to her knees right there in the middle of the rug and started shaking. Not crying, shaking. Her hands covered her mouth like she was holding something in, and her shoulders began to tremble like her body was short-circuiting. That's when I realized she wasn't acting. This wasn't a performance. Whatever she was feeling, it was real. Ugly, uncontrollable, and real. Then the words finally came out of her. I thought you left me for good. What? That broke whatever silence I had wrapped myself in. I sat forward. My voice cracked before I even said anything. I asked her what she meant. She just kept mumbling. I thought you were gone. I thought I ruined everything. She still hadn't said his name. I asked her directly. Who was he? She didn't pretend not to understand. No games. Just silence again. And then, like pulling teeth, she whispered. I didn't plan anything. I swear. It just happened. I didn't mean for it to feel like that. Feel like what? That line hit harder than anything else. Not it meant nothing. Not it was a mistake. She used the word feel. Like there were emotions involved. Like something had woken up in her that I hadn't touched in years. And I realized, in that moment, that I hadn't lost her to a mistake. I'd lost her to a feeling. A moment that probably didn't even last 10 minutes, but had somehow done more damage than every argument we'd ever had. I asked her again, more forcefully, who was he? And that's when she looked up, eyes glassy, face pale, and whispered a name I didn't recognize. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part came next, when she said, he didn't know I was married. And everything inside me twisted into something dark, because it meant she hadn't just betrayed me. She had erased me. I didn't react the way I thought I would. No shouting, no flipping furniture, no dramatic exits. Just this eerie stillness inside me, like my brain was trying to process a different language. He didn't know I was married. That line kept echoing, bouncing off the walls of my skull. I don't even know if she realized what she had admitted. That she'd crossed the line so completely, so deliberately, that I wasn't even a factor anymore. I asked her again if she had told him, ever. She shook her head, said she didn't think it would get that far, as if some invisible boundary had been crossed, not by her, but by the situation. Like it just happened to her. Like she tripped and fell into infidelity. She said it wasn't physical yet, that it was emotional, as if that made it cleaner, more forgivable. I almost laughed. But what made it worse, what twisted the knife, was how sorry she looked. Genuinely sorry. Not panicked, not manipulative. It was the kind of sorrow that made you second-guess your own pain. The kind that made me want to comfort her, even though she was the one who set fire to everything. I asked her how long it had been going on. She hesitated, then said, about 2 months. 2 months. And I hadn't noticed. Or maybe I had. The coldness, the phone always face down, the forced laughter, but I didn't want to admit it. She kept saying she didn't sleep with him, that she was close. That last night, at the party, something was about to happen. But when she saw me leave, everything shattered. She said it was like a mirror breaking. She finally saw herself. Saw what she was doing. Saw what she'd already done. But by then, it was too late. I still hadn't stood up from the couch. She was still kneeling on the rug like a penitent statue, begging silently for a reset button that didn't exist. The room felt heavier by the second. I didn't yell. I didn't forgive. I just stared at her like I was trying to recognize the person I used to love. But she looked unfamiliar now, like a dream I woke up from halfway through. And all I could think was, if she hadn't seen me leave, would she still be with him right now? The silence after her confession wasn't peaceful. It was surgical, sharp. I could hear the hum of the fridge from the kitchen, the muffled footsteps of someone upstairs, the sound of a car passing outside like the world had the audacity to keep moving while mine had just frozen in place. She was still on the floor, now sitting back on her heels like she wasn't sure if she was supposed to stay or crawl away. I didn't speak. I think I was afraid of what would come out of my mouth. Not rage, but something colder. Something I wouldn't be able to walk back. She tried to reach for my hand once. I pulled it away. Not dramatically, not to make a point, just instinctively, like someone flinching from a hot stove. I didn't want to be touched. Not by her. Not now. Maybe not ever again. And yet, part of me still wanted her to fight for it. Some twisted part of me was hoping she'd scream, beg, sob, collapse. Anything that showed she still wanted to fix it. But she didn't. She just sat there and stared at the floor like she was already living in the aftermath. Later, she said she'd sleep on the couch. I didn't argue. She grabbed a blanket from the hallway closet and wrapped herself in it like a ghost, lying on the edge of the cushions like someone trying not to take up space. I went into the bedroom and shut the door behind me, but I didn't sleep. I just stared at the ceiling, eyes burning, trying to convince myself that this wasn't some elaborate nightmare, that it wasn't still last night, that I wasn't going to wake up in 20 minutes and hear her humming in the kitchen while making coffee, unaware that everything was about to break. But I did hear her, around 3 a.m., when she got up and walked around the apartment. No lights, just the soft creaking of the floorboards and the occasional whisper of her breath. Maybe she was checking to see if I was asleep. Maybe she was just pacing like I used to do in college when I couldn't figure out who I was supposed to be. I didn't move. Didn't give her the satisfaction of knowing I was awake. I didn't want her to think she could reach me. Not yet. And then, sometime before dawn, I realized something I hadn't considered all night. I still didn't know his face. I didn't know his voice, or what he did for a living, or whether he had any idea what he had helped destroy. I didn't know if he was still texting her, if he was still waiting, if she'd told him anything yet, or if she was planning to vanish from both our lives and pretend none of it ever happened. But I knew one thing. I needed to see him. Not to fight him. Not even to confront him. I just needed to know what kind of man she had traded me for, even if it was only in her heart. And that thought kept me up until the sky turned gray. By noon, I had memorized his name. It kept repeating in my head like a curse I couldn't unhear, Logan Teller. I found it written in her notebook, half buried beneath a stack of receipts on the kitchen counter. She'd scribbled it on a page with no context, just his name next to a phone number and what looked like a meeting time. I don't think she meant to leave it out. I think she was too shaken to remember where she last touched anything. I didn't ask permission. I didn't ask questions. I just took the name and started looking. It didn't take long. A LinkedIn profile popped up first. Marketing consultant. Same city. 29. A A face that looked like it was designed in a lab to be perfectly forgettable, clean-cut, symmetrical, painfully normal. No wedding ring in any photos. A dog in one. A beach photo in another, taken by someone he clearly wanted to impress. The man didn't seem like a villain. He looked like the kind of guy who holds the elevator for strangers and tips well. And somehow, that made it worse. I wasn't looking for a monster. I was hoping for one. I wanted to see something in his eyes that said predator, user, liar, something that would justify the storm in my chest. But all I saw was a man who probably still had no idea he was part of a betrayal. No idea I existed. That was the part that lit the fuse. Not the cheating, not the lying, but the fact that I had been erased so thoroughly. Even the man who replaced me didn't know he was holding a stolen place. And now I couldn't stop thinking about what would happen if I stood in front of him. Just once. No anger. No fists. Just presence. I wanted him to see me. To know what I looked like. To remember. I thought seeing Logan's face would help me understand something. Maybe even settle something inside me. But instead, it opened a door I wasn't ready to walk through. I didn't reach out. I didn't message him. I just watched. That first day, I scrolled through his public social media like a stalker in denial, collecting meaningless details like breadcrumbs. A birthday dinner from 3 weeks ago. A blurry photo of a cat that wasn't his. A book he reposted about emotional intelligence. It all looked so normal. So clean. Too clean. That night, I sat across from Marla at the dinner table. She had made pasta. One of those quiet, guilty meals that felt more like a truce than dinner. We didn't talk much. Her eyes kept flicking up to check if I was okay, but I gave her nothing. I asked her if she'd spoken to him. She said no. I believed her, but not because I trusted her, because she looked too hollow to lie convincingly. I told her I found his name. She didn't ask how. She just nodded, like she knew I would. Like she expected it. She asked what I planned to do. I said I didn't know. She said she was sorry, again, and I nodded, again, because I was tired of hearing it. Sorry doesn't stitch up a wound. It just tells you someone else knows you're bleeding. Later that week, I followed Logan. It wasn't hard. He posted about working from a cafe downtown, a place I knew well. I showed up the next day around the same time. Sat at the far corner with a black coffee I barely touched, my eyes behind a book I wasn't reading. And there he was, right on time, in a gray jacket and headphones, tapping away at his laptop like he had nothing to hide. Because he didn't. He really didn't know. I watched him laugh with the barista, thank her twice, and leave a $5 tip. He held the door open for a woman with a stroller. He helped an old man pick up a dropped glove. He was decent, which only made everything worse. He wasn't the villain. He was the unknowing ghost haunting my marriage. And somehow, I was starting to feel like the intruder. When I got home that evening, Marla was asleep on the couch again. Or pretending to be. I watched her chest rise and fall in rhythm. Peaceful. Untouched. As if all the chaos lived only in my half of the house. I wondered if she dreamed about him. If his name lived somewhere in her subconscious now, stitched quietly into her comfort. I stood over her for a long time. Not doing anything. Not thinking anything. Just existing in the same room, unseen. And it hit me then. I hadn't lost her to love, or passion, or even to another man. I had lost her to the version of herself she thought she could be without me. I told myself I just wanted to see him again. That was the lie I needed to keep going. That I was simply observing. That it was harmless. That knowing more would somehow help me move on. But when I saw Logan again, 2 days later, outside that same cafe, I didn't stay across the room this time. I walked right in. He didn't recognize me, of course. Why would he? I was a ghost in his story. I sat 2 tables over, angled so I could study him without being obvious. He was on the phone, smiling, relaxed. It occurred to me that this man had no idea he'd been living in the center of my emotional ruin. And it made me feel powerful, just for a moment. I waited until he left, then followed him. Not closely, not dangerously, just enough to watch. He walked to his car, checked something on his phone, and drove off. That should have been the end of it. But I wrote him a message that night. From a burner account. No name, no photo. I kept it simple. Just a sentence. Did you know the woman you've been seeing is married? I stared at the message for nearly an hour before hitting send. My hands were shaking. Not from fear, from adrenaline. From the twisted hope that I might finally hear something honest. I didn't expect a reply. Not right away. But I kept checking every few minutes. like a kid waiting for fireworks after striking a match. He replied 4 hours later. Who is this? That was it. Nothing else. But it was enough to prove one thing. She still hadn't told him. I didn't reply to Logan's message. I had stared at his words for so long the screen began to blur, my reflection hovering just above the letters like some ghost trying to climb out. But in the end, I didn't type another thing. I closed the tab, deleted the account, and sat there in the dark with the strangest feeling. Not anger, not triumph. Just emptiness. Marla and I talked the next morning. For real, this time. No blame, no screaming. Just the kind of conversation people only have when there's nothing left to protect. She told me everything. How small she'd started to feel in our marriage. How lonely. How invisible. How Logan had shown up at the right time with the right kind of attention and made her feel like someone new. She cried when she told me it wasn't really about him, but about who she thought she was becoming without me. And for the first time in weeks, I told her the truth, too. About how I'd been disappearing before she ever did. How I'd been sleepwalking through the routines. Avoiding conflict. Avoiding emotion. Pretending everything was fine because fine is easier than real. We didn't magically fix anything that day, but we decided something neither of us expected, to start over. From scratch. No pretending. No perfect ending. Just two people who had burned their house down and were standing in the ashes, asking if there was enough left to build something new. We started therapy the next week. It wasn't easy. It still isn't. There are moments where I still flinch at the sound of her phone buzzing. Days when she sees Logan's name in her mind like a bruise that hasn't faded yet. But we're learning to look each other in the eye again. To stop punishing and start listening. To hold space for the ugly parts and not look away. Sometimes, the worst thing that happens to you is the thing that breaks everything false and gives you a chance to build something real. We still have the candle. It actually stays lit now. Please like the video and share your thoughts in the comments. I read them all.